Where are we?
We're in Calais.
Okay.
We should be in London. We should be having tea and crumpets in the great United Kingdom. But no, I've been officially banned from the UK for racism. And now I'm stuck in Calais.
I'm stuck in Calais. Explain what happened.
All right, so I was coming in on a bus. I figured Calais would be one of the best places to come through, and I figured that wouldn't be a problem, but much like Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner, I was stopped at the border and brought in for questioning. Initially, I figured it would be sort of normal questioning, like what happened to Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone, who were detained 2 days before me, where they asked me why I'm going, my political motives, all these sort of things. But once I was put into a detention center after the normal border police had questioned me, I got a knock on the door from the Kent, UK police, who handed me this form, and that's where things kind of went sideways. It's the Schedule 7 Terrorism Act, and they said, you need to read this. You are being brought in to be questioned under the Terrorism Act.
Under the Terrorism Act, and you wrote here, do not have the right to remain silent. Now, for everyone in Britain, all we ever think is you have the right to remain silent. That's what you get told if you get arrested. But you're told you don't have the right to remain silent.
Yeah, I effectively no rights. It's because it's supposed to be to prevent a terrorist attack. They're supposed to take you in if they believe you are going to commit a terrorist attack or you're involved in it in somehow. So you lose all your rights effectively so that they can solve this problem and make sure you don't attack the UK. I immediately got up in a tuff saying, like, I want legal representation. I want to be able to make a phone call. Of course, I answered all their questions. I refused to let them in my phone. That was the one thing that I was not cooperative on. And they
legal representative. They said you couldn't have any.
for the first hour, no. They just get to
not.
question me, and then after an hour, if I demand a solicitor, they can still technically say no to the solicitor after the first hour if they think it'll impede with the investigation. So they could just make something up. But they did say, okay, we'll call a solicitor for you after an hour of me being interrogated. And they also called my father after an hour of being interrogated. But I got asked some bizarre questions in that hour in this tiny, really hot room where I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, I'm being questioned as a terrorist.
Under terrorism.
Yeah.
What were they asking you?
So they asked me a manner of questions. It started a little less weird. They asked me about my speech that I gave in Belgium for a Flemish nationalist group. Then they asked me to describe my political ideology. Then they asked me about my religion and asked if I was a Christian extremist, how I would describe my Christianity. And after that, this is where things got really weird. They said, how do you feel about someone driving a car or a truck into a group of people, a group of Muslims, particularly, like they singled out Muslims? And I literally started laughing in the interview and was like, what? Like, I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I mean, obviously I think that's a horrific thing. Like, generally a pretty bad thing to run a car into a bunch of people. You can check any of my social media, and I've never once supported that. And I even mentioned to them, I said, you're asking me if I'm a Christian, you're asking me if I want to run cars into people, how I feel about that. I think you may have your priorities messed up here. And they turned to me and they said, oh, we have lots of problems with right-wing terrorism here too. We have to investigate everything. How do you feel about right-wing terrorism anyways? It's insanity.
Do you think they asked Muslims that are trying to get into Britain? Do you think they're pulled into a room and asked, how do you feel about people running over non-Muslims in cars?
Right.
Do you think they're asked that?
No, I think it would be scandalous. Certainly imagine if it were a Muslim public figure that were going through the border. And they were, and not only that, but banned from the country for quote-unquote racism. It would never happen. It would never happen, and we all know it.
The racism, because what's come out is they've said racist material in Luton. Can you explain what that was?
Right. So after about 3 hours of questioning by the police under this Terrorism Act and a bit of time of break because I kept demanding my legal rights and to speak to a lawyer, which everyone should know. This was an amazing education, actually, in how I watched tons of movies before on interrogations like this. I've seen TV shows, videos, and I used the knowledge from these TV shows and videos, and it shockingly worked. Like, I got to retain a lot of my rights because I said, no, I'm not going to let you into my cell phone. I don't have to tell you the code. You have to give me a legal representative. I demanded all of these things, and they never got to go into my cell phone, despite the many threats. They said, if you don't give us the code, we're going to take it for 7 days and hack into it and download all the data anyways. We're going to put you away and take your blood. And they basically lie so that they can get you to do certain things when you're in this interrogation room.
Was you scared? Being held under the Terrorism Act? It's a bizarre experience because you don't know what you've done. I'm like trying to think. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've never committed terrorism or ever wanted to commit terrorism in my life. What have I done? So you're picking up every maybe joke you've made online or something and thinking, oh my goodness, could they have taken this seriously? And you have no rights. You have no rights. So the biggest thing that I was worried about, though, is, of course, they wouldn't let me speak to, I couldn't make a call at the halfway mark. They instead called someone for me, and they called my father, and I was just thinking to myself, I am the worst daughter on earth. It is like 4 or 5 a.m. here, and they're calling my dad to tell him I've been detained in Calais. Like, what is he thinking right now, you know? What did they say to your dad?
So my dad actually recorded the call.
Your dad recorded the conversation?
Yeah. I don't know, do you want me to play it now, or?
I thought you'd play it now.
Okay.
How are you? It's PC Hughes here. I'm calling from France, actually, in Coquel. I'm calling just with regards to your daughter, just to let you know at the moment she is being detained. She just wants you to know that she is being detained at the moment under a power called Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act. She's just being questioned at the moment. She's all in order. She just thought you'd like to know that where she is.
A Terrorism Act?
Yes. We're just asking a few questions of her at the moment. Just so you know, it sounds worse than it is. It's not that we suspect her of being a terrorist or anything like that. We have a power here at the port to stop anyone who comes through, given certain criteria, and we can stop and ask some questions with regards to them. And should it pass the hour point during that examination, we then have to detain them and give them their legal.
Oh, anyways.
We then have to give them a legal. So he's admitting. So we're holding her under the Terrorism Act. Imagine what that was like for your dad.
I know. That's why I keep saying I'm the worst daughter on earth. My dad.
And you've done nothing wrong. You've committed no crime, and your father's getting a phone call to say his 22-year-old daughter is being held in Britain, or even in France, by the British under the Terrorism Act. And then he goes on to admit, well, it's okay, she hasn't done anything, we don't suspect her of being a terrorist, we're just completely abusing our power.
Yeah.
And no legal representation. I'm shocked by that. I'm shocked that they can allowed or they can even do this.
Yeah, now the Kent police are perfectly lovely people, but they were obviously getting orders from higher up. They were obviously being told, stop this girl at the border.
Were they waiting for you? You know, when you come through the border, was it preempted? Was it just you put your passport in and then it flagged up? Or do you think they knew you were coming in?
So here's what I think what happened. I think the reason, I could be wrong, but I did speak to legal representation, and we're still kind of discussing these things, so I can't go too much into detail over it, but they were not waiting for me. They scanned my passport and something came up that made the guy give a double take. And then he went to the back and I guess had a discussion with colleagues or whatever, made a few calls. Then I was brought into detention. Now, for the process, I was not done questioning under this Terrorism Act when they pulled me out of the room suddenly and said, we're moving you to the other detention. We've just got a call from the UK border enforcement or whatever it may be. So this investigation is done. And it was just like abruptly ended. And then they came to the room and brought me this little piece of paper that says you're banned from the United Kingdom. So what my legal representation that I spoke to thinks, what a few other people that I've spoken to think, is they actually used Schedule 7 to last minute detain me while they were trying to come up with something to ban me from the country for. Now, this is just an assumption, but it doesn't make sense that they would just abruptly end
Section
the
7.
Schedule 7 questioning, and that they have admitted multiple times, I am not a terrorist, don't suspect me of being a terrorist.
But we're holding you under the Terrorism Act. That's complete abuse of power.
Right.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable, do you know, to put from our point of view, it's unbelievable that our government or our police would put a young lady through this. I know you can sit here and smile about it, or would laugh things off. Your father's had a phone call, he's been woken up, he's been told his daughter's been held under the Terrorism Act. That must be a scary thing for anyone. I'd be scared if I got pulled in, we're holding you under the Terrorism Act. For nothing. And then reading this, so you've asked for leave to enter the United Kingdom as a visitor for up to 5 days. However, by your own admission, on the 24th of February 2018, you're involved in the distribution of racist material in Luton. I believe that your actions whilst in the United Kingdom present a threat to the fundamental interests of society and to the public policy of the United Kingdom. Well, the public policy of the United Kingdom is you can't talk about Islam, so that's where we're going to go with this. But can we ask you, on what was you doing on the 24th of February in Luton?
Right.
Can you explain the situation?
I'm utterly flabbergasted by them saying, by your own admission. Not in a million years would I say what I was doing in Luton was racist flyering. Yeah. That's insanity. I have no idea where they came up with that from. But what actually happened was, after reading a Vice article that proclaimed that Jesus Christ may very well have been a gay man, we thought it would be interesting to do a social experiment and see how people would react to other gods being proclaimed as gay. And we went out and we set up a kind of flyering booth and acted as we were a left-wing social justice group that loved Allah but thought he was a god for gay people and trans people. Allah is gay, he's trans, he's all of us. You know, that kind of classic lefty message. And of course, the social experiment was just to see what would happen. Obviously, nothing happens when you say Jesus Christ may be gay. What happens when you say Allah is gay? I guess we figured that out.
You get arrested under the Terrorism Act. What happened on the day? What actually? It's just explain. So, for this social experiment, your outcome was to see what would happen. Talk us through what happened.
So what happened was the police did actually show up at one point. They were called, and people were extremely offended to the point that they felt we didn't have the right to free speech anymore, and the police agreed with them and backed them up and said, this is essentially blasphemy. This is essentially against the law for you to be flyering here and saying these things because they have offended someone. That was the reasoning, and they confiscated our papers. They took any flyer that said Allah is gay and said we cannot come back and redistribute this stuff. Now, I was not charged. They didn't arrest me. I complied with them, and they were just like, you're not allowed to come back because this is speech that is not allowed. But I complied totally. So for them to bring this up on this paper later and claim it's racism and I'm banned from the country, it makes no sense whatsoever. Essentially,
you've been arrested under the Terrorism Act for committing blasphemy in the UK.
Blasphemy, yes. I'm not sure what year this is. I know Big Ben is still in construction and time has stopped, but it seems more like it's going back, to be honest.
I think I'm following what the British public are saying, I'm following what everyone's saying, and everyone seems outraged by this. Even people who do not sit on the same side of the political fence as you. I'm reading commentators talking and tweeting and saying how outrageous it is that you've been held under terrorism. And the reasons they're giving now, this reason, what did I tell you? Saeed Qadari, he's a Muslim cleric who is banned from preaching in Pakistan. He's banned from preaching in Pakistan because he's that radical. Mm-hmm. Recently, very recently, he was doing a tour of talks in UK mosques. So he's on record as glorifying murder, inciting murder. He's a radical extremist. He was welcomed into our country. What do you think? Why would you think that would be? What's the difference when we have Muslim clerics coming in promoting hate, but you're held under the Terrorism Act for a social experiment? What's that make you think of Britain?
I mean, we read all these articles about 500 jihadis let through the border, these extremists holding up signs saying behead those who do not believe in Islam, and it doesn't really quite hit you. It doesn't really quite process for you. But after sitting here and having the left-wing press, these verified liberals all over social media gloating and praising me being banned from the UK, saying, glad we enforced our borders correctly, it's been a shocking experience to see what the UK's priorities are. I have no criminal record. I speak the language. I damn well love the culture. I love the British people. I intended on coming in, staying for the amount of time I said I was going to stay, and leaving back to Toronto, only contributing to the country. And yet, I have the left-wing media gloating that I'm banned from the nation. Well, they ignore jihadis coming through the gates. And the border police ignore jihadis coming through the gates while I'm being held and detained under Terrorism Act. Which, you're right, I do laugh, but it's a little humiliating to have my father called and them tell him, your daughter's being held as a terrorist.
And the whole country, and the whole world's been told. Not
Yes.
just your father, the whole world has been told that you've been held under the Terrorism Act. Everyone would presume you've done something seriously wrong.
Right, I've had people messaging, tagging the Canadian political parties saying now that the UK has found Lauren guilty of terrorism, of course ignoring the whole fact that I'm guilty of nothing, we shouldn't let her back in the country, all of these different things. And this is likely going to come back and people are going to use it against me, saying, weren't you held under the terrorism Schedule 7?
In a way of slandering you.
In a way of slandering me. Because, yeah, normally this law, what it should be used for is for stopping people who they seriously think are going to blow up and murder a bunch of people and run them over with a car. That's what it should be used for. That's what it was supposed to be used for, but like we've seen with many of these acts that are passed and giving the government large scope and ability to abuse them, they get abused. And in the cases against us.
They bring in these laws. We have jihadis coming back and forth, committing terrorism when they're all on the watch list, and then they enforce new laws. I didn't know about this law. I'm a British citizen. I didn't know that people can be held, and that they have to talk, that they're not allowed legal representation. I had no idea of this, and I don't think many of the British public would. And what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? Any idea?
So, because they've admitted I am not a terrorist, they don't even suspect me of terrorism, things seem a little fishy. And by a little fishy, I mean a lot fishy. It seems like things were done rather out of order. And simply the fact of banning me from a place because of racism over saying Allah is gay, I'm not sure where the racism is in that sentence, and by I'm not sure I mean it doesn't exist. So I'm not going to simply lie on my back and just allow the UK to stamp on my face. I'm not going to sit there and be a victim. I get very annoyed when I feel like right-wingers are perpetually under attack. It's time we fight back. It's time we don't allow ourselves to just be the perpetual victim. And so myself, Brittany Pettibone, and Martin Sellner, who of course went through also a horrific, ridiculous experience where they were held for 3 days. We are all looking into legal representation to fight this and be allowed to have crumpets and tea in London again.
Do you have any idea how expensive that is?
So we've had, I'm not sure if any of this will go through, but we have had lawyers approach us saying, we may be able to help you for reduced costs, whatever it may be, but you're right, there are still large costs behind trying to have our damn right to go into the United Kingdom.
Which I'd say that even just me as a British man, this has to be challenged, because this is the start of stopping anyone in entering our country who has a political opinion that they don't agree with. Mm-hmm. They've stopped 3 people now, 2 of them journalists. It's unheard of. So it has to be challenged. So say anyone watching this that is going to be angered and frustrated by it, and they want to support you in pursuing this, how can they do that?
Yeah, if you want to be able to support me personally, you can go to laurensouthern.net, and there should be all of the support information there. But I'm also, of course, going to be meeting with Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner about where we are going with this in the future, and we might come up with some sort of legal fundraiser or whatever it may be. But in the meantime, of course, you can go visit my website, laurensouthern.net, where people come to support my journalism and just surviving detainment and everything in general. But yes, no, as crazy of an experience as this has been, the silver lining is there are people like you who are here who have driven all the way to Calais in the middle of the night to come and defend my right to free speech. There are people online, Majid Nawaz even defending me, Nigel Farage even mentioned it. Just there's been an outcrying of support for free speech. So while our government may not respect it so much and our bureaucrats may want to shut us up and restrict our free speech, it seems the public doesn't want that.
This exposes a very worrying trend from the government of silencing and introducing blasphemy laws. That's what this is. The introduction of blasphemy laws because you've criticised Islam. All of this has happened. You've got the result. You've got the end result of your social experiment.
Right.
You've got the end result of your social experiment. Unbelievable. Good luck, and hopefully we'll get you back into Britain.
Thank you so much, Tommy.
Thank you. I just want to say a personal thank you to every single person who supported me. I couldn't bring you these videos without your support. We have no big funders, no big donators. So this is literally by you, for you. So I want to say a personal thank you. And if anyone else who wants to keep up to date with what we're doing, we've got plenty of exciting things coming up now. I've gone independent. You can do so at tommyrobinson.online. Thank you.